Hello. It's nice to know you're listening again. It's Christmas Eve. The podcast is slightly different to usual. So you could say it's special, but it's not a Christmas special. Me and Holly went to see Rogue One. Enjoy that.
Would you like to tell the listeners about your coffee?
I put 6 sweeteners in it. That's the coffee story.
So, it's pretty wild. It had conflict.
I'm crazy. I'm mad, mad.
And you're also Holly Powers as well, who...
Yes, that's an important piece of information. Yes.
Have met before and would have met a lot more frequently if I edited half the things we also record.
Oh God, yeah, we did
like
what was it? Was it Harry Potter that we watched?
Harry Potter fan fiction. Yeah.
Harry Potter fan fiction.
Yeah. And we might do a Buffy podcast soon.
Yes.
But we definitely should because
we definitely should do that.
If you want to donate money so me and Holly can watch all of Buffy for a month, do that.
I'll just quit my job.
Mad, yeah. Just fund us for a month.
Because it's so topical.
Yeah,
it's so topical.
We'll take sabbaticals. That's what people are crying out for. I did do my research and there's a whole 2 other Buffy podcasts, so the world is crying out for more.
For a podcast of a show from the 90s?
Yeah, I think...
It started 97?
Yeah, 90s to early 2000s, I think. And I think it's still going in comic book format as well.
I remember trying to go to the cinema to see the original film,
Really?
but I was too young.
I haven't seen
And I went down to Mr. Video when it came out on video with my mum.
Were you too young then, or were you allowed
I
to?
think I was 14. I think.
Was that...
But I might have been 4.
And speaking of trips to the cinema, we were at the cinema.
Hence the noise in the background.
Hence the noise in the background. Yeah, we're hanging out in the coffee shop bit.
Yeah,
like
looking...
a couple of cool... Though we haven't got pop guards, so people know we're amateurs.
Yeah.
Because I've forgotten them, that's why, so...
Well, that is just amateur. So we've got to go into the movie with all this recording equipment.
Yep.
Not to record the movie, of course, but, you know, we'll get away with it. We'll
release our audio commentary.
Yeah.
Which is annoying I didn't bring the pop guard, because all the characters' names, famously in Star Wars Rogue One, which we're going to see, are all begin with the hard consonant P, don't they? They all...
I have no idea.
There's
at
Peter.
All. Peter.
There's
Peter Piper, is it?
Piper. Yeah. There's a Pan. A
Pettigrew.
There's a Pangolin.
A Pippin.
Mr. Pippin. Yeah. Mr. Pippin and Dr. Pangolin.
Dr. Pepper, I believe.
Dr. Pepper. Pippa.
She's one of a twin, isn't
I've
she?
I've exhausted that. I will get home later and think of all other words. But yeah, we're off to go see Rogue One.
I'm so excited I took a sip of my coffee there.
Yeah, why are we off to see Rogue One? Why have you dragged me out of my hibernation to go see Rogue One?
Shut up, dragged you out. I was in hibernation too, because I want to see Rogue One. I have to see Rogue One. I have to see it. I'm very, very excited. Very excited.
Good.
I'm genuinely excited. I was going to watch the 3 originals over the weekend, but I was just too shattered to do anything. So, you know, I ended up watching Lucy Wolseley, her documentary on the 6 Wives of Henry VIII.
I've heard that's quite good, though.
It's gripping stuff.
Talking about it, yeah.
Really gripping. But we won't get distracted by talking about the Wives of Henry VIII, because we're here to talk about Rogue One.
Darth Vader. So why do you have to see this film? Why?
Oh, it's a sad compulsion, really, isn't it? I have to know what happens in the movie. I mean, I've obviously grown up with Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think we were all a little bit hurt and disappointed by what happened a little while ago.
I've had this thing...
I mean,
my relationship,
dare we even mention its
my
name?
relationship with the prequels is this, right? I'll admit that as a kid, when I saw them in the cinema... I liked them because it was Star Wars and I was seeing Star Wars in the cinema. So as a kid, lightsabers, new toys, that Star Wars theme, like the score's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and that was enough to carry me through those 2 hours while in the cinema.
Lots of
fighting. But then, what I think is a testament to the quality of those films is I think I might have at some point owned 2 copies of the original trilogy on VHS because one I'd nearly worn out. Whenever I'd see the Star Wars film and then I'd get the next prequel one on video for a birthday or Christmas, I think they're still in their cellophane now, and it's like I think that's where. Yeah. Even as a kid, like I do just enjoy going to the cinema, and I can enjoy going to the cinema without necessarily watching something good. And I think as a kid, I think a lot of people as children, depending on what age they are, probably enjoyed the prequels in the cinema. But it's when you never have the desire to watch it over something else, like and then the rise of the prequels as well. Obviously, was one of the first big branded Lego products, if not the first. So I remember getting loads of Star Wars Lego when I was a kid.
Yeah,
and again, one of the odd things. One of the first things I did was I had like a Darth Maul and an Obi-Wan, and I mixed all the pieces up and made Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi. So it's weird.
That's quite
even as a kid, without realising it, it was like, oh, I obviously prefer. But I think the pod race has a lot of potential. Like, sadly, there's no emotional weight behind it, but I think as a set piece, I think the pod race is a fine original idea.
The first movie could have been good if somebody had come along and redrafted it. There's a lot of potential.
But I think, but for me, like, I really like the Red Letter Media Plinkett reviews of them. If you haven't seen them,
they're beautiful.
They're amazing, aren't they? So they're good. I really like them. But after that, like, I'm not one of those people that's angry about the prequels. Like, what annoys me is you still can't see the original Star Wars trilogy as they were released in the cinema. Decent quality.
That is annoying.
That's where I take umbrage with George Lucas. It's like I personally think, all right, you've tried and failed with the prequels, whatever. I think if you look at it as like from an auteur perspective and look at him, they're quite interesting because he's tried to reclaim where he was this rogue, no pun intended, but where he was this like rogue filmmaker who kind of played by his own books and all of that sort of stuff, and now he's become this like corporation.
It's one of those things where it actually shows you, because usually you have this great genius and then producers come along and try to ruin their idea. Whereas in this case, the producers came along and they actually made it good. They turned Yoda, I think, was originally going to be played by a chimpanzee, and they obviously pulled him back from crazy. I think Han Solo was originally going to be like a lizard man. So the guy he shoots, and he does shoot first, the guy he shoots was actually closer to what he was going to look like. And also, what was it, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker were going to be the same character, and just all these quite crap ideas.
But those crap ideas, like, surely you understand one of the things with writing is it's best to get something out on paper first, and the common thing is rewriting is rewriting. It's like, whenever I hear about all those things, it's like, it is terrible because those are first draft ideas, those are second draft ideas, but it's like, it gets rewritten, it gets worked on,
and it's like his crap ideas with the prequels were allowed to just go, and everybody clapped and celebrated and said, "Oh my God, you're wonderful."
So in short, like, the prequels, boo-hoo, they're not very good, but you know what? You don't have to watch them. Whatever, like, they don't detract. Obviously there's loads of horrible things that happen in it that are contradictions to the originals and blah blah blah, but you can completely disregard them. You don't have to.
But it's also the fact that
you don't have to let it annoy you.
You don't have to let it annoy you. But George Lucas, I don't remember these first time round because I wasn't born. But in the very first sort of press releases, media stuff, when Star Wars the originals were coming out, they talked about the fact that there was prequels. They talked about the fact that there was going to be 3 more movies after these 3. We always knew there was more. I mean, he starts with episode 4. So, I mean, it took us however many years to get to the prequels.
The first one wasn't episode 4 for a while. It was originally Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It was only when when the re-releases came out that...
I did not know that.
That's when episode 4 became episode 4. Originally, it is just Star Wars.
It's just Star Wars. People would get confused
that
if that was the
prequel
first
idea,
one.
though, then starts...
Had always been there, because what's his name, Mark Hamill, talks about the prequels in one of his very first
that
interviews.
That interview's amazing. Is it the Blue Peter one?
The Blue Peter
right,
one, yeah.
That interview, I'll link it. That interview is incredible. One, you just wouldn't have an interview like that anymore.
No.
Like you couldn't have an actor talk so candidly about ideas like that are just half-finished ideas.
Yeah, you couldn't, because everybody would pounce on it on the internet in a way that they couldn't have done then.
And a dog is just eating soup or stew just out of his bowl.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It's brilliant. Mind you, I don't watch Blue Peter anymore. They might be just as candid now.
I'm not sure what happened.
I don't even know. Does it even exist
I
anymore?
think Blue Peter could have a man staring at the camera going, "Take the knife and kill your parents," and no one would know because no one's watching it.
You might be right about that one.
This is where I'll get a load of angry Blue Peter fans emailing.
I've got a Blue Peter badge and I find what you said quite offensive, actually.
It's a crossover demographic. People that like listening to this little podcast and Blue Peter fans are one and the same.
I'm just bitter that I never got a Blue Peter badge.
I know. And
because I didn't know what an SAE was.
Yeah.
They always said send an SAE.
And you can
And
buy
then when I
one
found
now,
out that it meant self-addressed envelope, I thought it meant write the address yourself.
Wow.
I was a very stupid
I would
child.
love a Blue Peter badge, but I wouldn't like to just order one off the eBay though or something. I'd like to still feel like I've earned it.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose one day when this podcast gets really famous, we'll go on there and have a candid interview with them.
And then I'll stick it into my flesh. I'll rip my top off in joy.
Don't the Marines
stick
do
the
that?
badge into my flesh and then...
As it's bleeding down your chest.
Ripping the dogs apart. That'd be great.
Bye-bye, children.
Yeah, they're all just waving goodbye while I'm just tearing the set apart in the background.
But to get back to Star Wars...
Yes, yeah.
What did you think of the last instalment, Episode 8?
Episode 8 I thought was... In hindsight, when I saw it in the cinema, there was a bit, and the exact bit where I realised I was bored out of my skull was when Harrison Ford turned up, and I was like, oh, this is the film then. Where, early on I was like, because I don't... My big issue with Star Wars, right, is, for me, why I really like, especially those first 3 films, and especially those first 2, is, I know it's the scenes people always talk about, but it's Yoda, it's the Battle of Hoth, it's the Mos Eisley Cantina, and it's seeing things that give a glimpse into like a bigger world that you know nothing about. And that's like Jabba's palace as well, is it's like,
oh yeah,
it's like, it's all this cool stuff. So then for the film just to
reiterate
have loads of Star Wars stuff, like that film does not need the Millennium Falcon in it. It doesn't need, like, for me what I like
or
is...
it could have had just the Millennium Falcon and everything else was completely different.
Yeah.
But to have basically Mos Eisley Cantina, to have the Death Star, to have friggin' the new version of Darth Vader, it was all just a little bit too much. And this is what the fans want. Here you go.
Yeah, and I think because I was enjoying Rey and Finn talking to each other with BB-8.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, these are new characters, they're doing new stuff. And then Han Solo turned up, and it was just like, oh, okay, this is on rails now. This has to be going a certain way.
And the bit at the end when they're all discussing the plan.
Yeah.
I thought that was clever, and then I realised it was just boring. Because the way Han Solo came up with ideas and sort of a nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the audience, this is what we did before, I know how it works. And I thought, oh, of course, it's all going to go completely tits up. Everything's going to change. He's going to think his plan's going to work because it worked last time, but then he's going to have to change. But it didn't. It just went the same way.
And I just started asking loads of weird questions when I was watching it. Like, I didn't understand why the Raid cast were in it and they didn't do any kung fu, or they don't do kung fu. I can't remember what martial arts they do, but they the cast from the Raid are in there, and the Raid is a have you seen the Raid?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The Raid is amazing, right? The Raid, just watch the Raid.
What is
the
it?
The Raid,
for those who haven't seen the Raid.
The first Raid is a 90-minute martial art movie made by a Welshman, filmed I think Indonesia. It's an Indonesian martial arts movie. I think they're using a martial arts style that we haven't really seen in cinema before, and it understands cinema so well. And
I feel a podcast coming.
It's incredible. Raid 1 and 2. There's Raid 1 and 2. We can do the raid. It's so good. There's a weird bit where these characters turn up. The camera's on them long enough to go, it's the guys from the raid.
Yeah.
And to have them turn up like we're going to have a fight and then not have a fight, I understand that hasn't happened to everyone, but I was like,
yeah.
So I felt let down.
Watching
then. Like,
that, well, even I felt let down at that bit because I was like, oh, this is going to turn.
Yeah.
This is going to turn upside down. It's going to turn into a pirates are chasing us movie. It's going to be different to how things went before. It's going to be a space race with all these, but it just didn't. It felt like, look at these guys.
And I think oddly, the ghost of the prequel shines over that film more than I think anyone's cares to admit, because it's such a massive apology for it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Disney now own all the prequels. They're not going to stop rinsing that cash cow. Like, if kids still buy Darth Maul toys, they're not. That's why the prequels, the episode 8 could have not acknowledged it, but it references like the clone army and a couple of other things.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, you've made it. You've had to acknowledge it. You don't want to, but Disney, you're not going to let up another 3 movies that have turned over profit. Like, so it's weird, and it's bits of it I enjoyed. Like, I thought, I thought Kylo Ren was a neat idea as a villain, but I think it just doesn't quite go far enough. I think
he wasn't different enough.
Yeah, but the idea of a Star Wars fanboy being a villain who suffers from like rage problems and stuff like that, like, you could have really gone far with that idea. But
again, if he'd stood on his own as the only reference back to the originals,
yes,
it would have been it would have been really, really cool.
And
but there was just too much of it.
And it felt like,
I mean, even what's her name? Even Rey's outfit was eerily familiar. It just it's like, this is what the hero wears.
And it's just like weird. It has odd, weird missteps as well, because the idea of like humanising a stormtrooper is a great idea, but then it unintentionally made when stormtroopers are just getting shot and blown apart and stuff. It's like, oh, these are all just misguided people. Like, Finn, this is like, oddly now you've made me empathise with one of them, where instead of them being like a force that, all right, they can't shoot and they're easy to take care of, but instead of being like stormtroopers in that very literal sense of the word, they just become like, oh god, they're all these orphans that have been brainwashed into thinking like this, and now we're supposed to laugh when Chewie blows them away with his bowcaster. It's like, that is a little bit. It does weird things like that, but
he wants to have all of his cake and eat it as well.
Yeah, and I just think I think as time goes on, I find Abrams quite a hollow director. I think Super 8's a very interesting movie because he's tried to make a Spielberg film with heart, but because for me it feels really artificial. There's bits that work and bits that I like, but I think Super 8 shows like what he can do well and also what he can do badly. I think Super 8's a kind of best example of his. Have you seen Super 8?
I haven't. It was on my watch list, but I was never that drawn to it. But what I can say is that even having not watched it, Stranger Things does it better. Stranger Things does Super 8 better than Super 8 ever could.
Super 8 doesn't have Dustin in it. Who is the boy wonder?
To be fair, nothing else has Dustin in it. Well, no, isn't he in Les Mis?
Is he in Les Mis?
Oh, I think he was on the stage show, not the actual.
Okay.
If he's not in Rogue One, so it's just going to fall below our expectations.
So
what do you know about Rogue One?
Well, I know it's directed by Gareth Edwards, I think, who did the last Godzilla film.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the film he did before that, Monsters, which I've been meaning to watch a lot because that was a low-budget film he made pretty much.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that, but I've never been able to find it for free, and I am a cheapo.
Quietly optimistic, I think, for Rogue One.
All I know is that it's got a girl in it, and I think I watched half a trailer
Yeah.
and then stopped watching because they gave away too much information. She's like the son of a general, the daughter of a general.
It's got
and that's it.
It's got someone who I think should have played a Jedi. Like I think Forrest Whitaker should have played Mace Windu. Like, I love.
What can you do?
I love
What can
Forrest
you do?
Whitaker. He's great. Have you seen Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai?
No.
Oh,
I haven't seen any of these films.
Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai is. What if we made a samurai movie set in New York? Yeah, okay. It is a little bit silly in a lot of places, but it's great. It's so much fun. And he's the kind of samurai character in that. But yeah,
Maybe he is a Jedi in this, or is he definitely
I have
not?
no idea.
I have no idea. Ooh.
But I've been saying for years that they should they should have just let other directors at Star Wars just film smaller stories with different directors doing different things and showed us what else is in that world. So.
Well, did you not see the Star Wars holiday story or whatever it was?
The Star Wars holiday
Yeah, that
special.
was a little taster of what could happen.
Have you seen that? Have you?
I
still haven't.
I'm sure I've seen a random Ewok movie, like a completely
yeah, they
separate
did,
Ewok movie,
yeah.
and it's like some family. I'm sure I've seen, and then of course there was the Ewok cartoon.
Yep.
I don't know if I've seen the Star Wars holiday story. If I
people
have,
trash George
too-
Lucas for like wrecking Star Wars, but it's like it's never been this sacred thing. Like it's always been a little bit tacky, which is kind of
Yeah.
part of its appeal, I think, is it's.
Well, it's like when they did the new Indiana Jones movie and everybody was like, oh, it's stupid because it's aliens. That's so unreal. And I was like, well, the other ones were about God.
Yeah.
I believe in aliens before I believe in God.
Yeah. I think.
No offence to anybody religious out there. It's just my own personal beliefs.
That's always the go-to point, isn't it, with the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls? You go, ooh, aliens, but it's like. That is the least. It's like Jar Jar Binks is not the biggest problem with the Phantom Menace. Like I get it.
He's the easiest
I get
thing
it,
to
and
have a go at.
because it sticks out like a sore thumb. But Indiana Jones could have dealt with aliens, and it could have worked. It just seems like the problem is these things aren't these grand tales. Like Star Wars are adventure movies. Indiana Jones is an adventure movie. Like the reason why the prequels and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull fall apart is because they've just kind of forgotten that. They just don't have that sense of fun, and they're just all over the place. It's
Well, yeah, or they couldn't quite do what they wanted to do. It's nothing. It's a bit nothing. It's a bit everywhere. It's trying to reunite the family in this crazy buddy comedy, and it's a bit crazy.
It's hollow, I think.
If Rogue One is able to pull off, basically, I want to see a simple hero's journey with new worlds, new things I've never seen before, and a few nods to the originals, because of course isn't it running like the year before the first one starts or something?
Yeah. So do you know the plot to it?
Well, I think there is a moment, I believe in the very, very first movie, A New Hope, where one of the people in the Rebel Alliance says, these are the plans to the Death Star. A lot of people died getting this to us. And this is the story of how that got to us.
Yeah.
To us?
Yeah.
I'm not in the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
So that's... And I know I know that it's supposed to be just before.
People go, oh, all the problems in the Star Wars universe would be solved with no internet, with internet. And so, yeah, well, it happened a long time ago, didn't it? In a galaxy far away. It's not, it's a film of space wizards. It's not.
They forget that it's fantasy. People seem to think that it's science fiction, and it's not. It's sword and sorcery in space.
I don't know where. It's weird that somewhere along the line there's a group of people that think Star Wars is serious science fiction.
It's magic. He has a sword and he uses magic. He's a space wizard.
Yep.
I mean, that's the end of that.
But you couldn't help but smile when he said the word space wizard there.
It's brilliant.
So it's great.
It's brilliant.
So hopefully, I just hope it is enough of its own thing and it's fun.
Yeah.
Should we go see it?
I think we should go and see it now.
I think Ip Man's in it as well. I think I might be wrong. I think Ip Man's in it. Have you seen Ip Man?
I've seen bits and pieces of Ip Man, and I know, yeah.
It's like a working class hero.
Excellent.
Ip Man's awesome. Right, let's go watch this film.
Let's go watch a movie.
And you could watch it as well if you want.
Yeah, you go watch it.
Go have fun.